people.
Hi, everyone. While we wait for latecomers to join us, I just wanted to do a quick introduction. Thanks so much for joining us on the solar tour today. We're very excited for our first ever virtual tour. I'm Nicola at the Illinois Solar Education Association, and this is Jim and Beth Galbreath's tour. We're pretty excited because they're going to talk about their own personal story, as well as the story of their church, which also has some solar on it. I'll hand it over to Beth and Jim to introduce themselves.
I'm Beth.
I'm Jim.
That's basically it.
But we have solar panels on our roof, and we want to talk about it.
We do. And we'd like to invite folks. Nicola, can they unmute themselves?
Yes, they can unmute themselves, and if they aren't able to do that, they can also type in their questions or introductions into the chat box.
Okay, we don't want to bore anyone, so we'd just like to know what brings you here. Why are you interested in solar? Where are you in the process, or why did you pick our tour? So anyone, just jump in.
Well, I'll start.
Joe?
My name's Joe. I'm from, actually I live in Cincinnati, used to live in Mount Prospect. My wife and I, we're in a process of trying to go totally off grid on a hill in the Cincinnati area.
Wow.
We've contracted for our home. It's pretty much off grid, but we need to add the solar panels to it, maybe geothermal heating later on. We used to go to First Methodist Church of Arlington Heights, and we were part of the team to put the solar panels on that church.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Then you can share that experience as well. That's cool.
Yeah, it was a long process. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I imagine.
Yes.
You were pioneering then.
Yeah.
And anyone else share why you are here, where you are in interest in solar?
Hi, I'm Cheryl Scott. I work in sustainability, and I wanted to learn more about solar firsthand from people that have solar panels. And I chose this tour partially because I grew up in the western suburbs that are near the area.
Oh, great.
Cool.
Thanks for coming.
Welcome.
Anyone else share why you're here, what you're interested in?
Okay, let me ask. You're all interested in starting solar. No one actually has solar at this point. Is that correct? Type in Nicola's chat box if you say, no, that would be terribly boring. Okay then. Well, in that case, I shall practice here sharing my screen. Share.
Something's happening. There we go.
There you go. Can everybody see my PowerPoint? Yay. Okay, great. This is just going to be a quick overview of solar in general and ours in particular. There are other slides in here that I'm not going to focus on. But one of the reasons we're here is because we really care about the world. We care about our grandchildren. We have one grandson. We really want him to live in a good world where he can actually breathe, where public health is not something that you have to be rich to have, where there are plenty of jobs for people. And there are lots of other reasons to go solar, such as saving money and increasing your home value, which we'll see. So diving right into our system, we have been involved in advocating for solar energy almost as long as Illinois Solar Energy Association has existed, Nicola. I got involved in 1973. So the organization started in 75. But it was only after Jim's retirement when we were able to buy a home of our own, that we were able to, as our first major improvement, put solar on the roof. Now, this was our first system, and our first system was only 2.75 kilowatts DC. And this is then the system that we contracted for last year and installed this year, just before COVID shut everything down. We added 6 more panels because we wanted to buy an all-electric vehicle, the Leaf that you see there, slurping on our solar electricity. But of course, then the COVID came, and so we've been doing less driving than we expected, but that's fine. We now have 16 panels, and it was a challenge because those new panels are so much more efficient than the old ones that the installer actually had trouble finding a system that would work together, but they did. And so we now, that was an additional 1.74, and we now have a system of 4.49, 4.5 kilowatts DC. Now, I want to also talk about, or also share about our church's system. The church had been meeting in various places, like beer gardens and bars and various things for 7 years, and finally bought an old dry cleaners and renovated it. And we jumped at the opportunity to help establish and donate the system that is 13 kilowatt hours DC for that building. It's a renovated dry cleaners, but it's a very exciting place. I could talk about that for a while, but I'm not going to. So, but this is the system that we have there. As you can see, it's a flat roof. It's a different kind of system. It's a commercial system. So some of the myths that people have, which I'm just going to touch on very briefly on all of them, is, oh, you have to have a south exposure on your roof. We don't get enough sun. It will be harder to sell my house. Installing solar will increase my property taxes. Solar panels will cause my roof to leak, deteriorate, or collapse. Or it's too cold here. Solar panels can't withstand snow, hail, winds, and sleet. And finally, it's too expensive. So let's just briefly take a look at those. This is a map created by the Federal Energy Agency some years ago, National Research and Energy Lab, there at the bottom, about insulation, the solar that falls on different places. And as you can see, we get just about the same amount of solar energy as northern Spain. And Germany, which is a world leader in solar, has less sun radiation than Alaska. Now, admittedly, it's more spread out over the year, but nevertheless, you can use solar energy almost anywhere. And the next question is, do you have to have a south-facing roof? This is our house. This is the first installation that we had. The satellite is looking down on us. And as you can see, we have a tree in the front. We have trees in the back. It's, you know, it's not the most ideal system. It's not the most ideal solar aspect, but it works. And it does great work for us, which Jim will get to later. This is the system for, this is the solar picture for our church. And as you can see, it doesn't face south either, but of course it's a flat roof, so it doesn't make that much difference. But it also, most commercial buildings also don't have trees that you have to worry about. So those are two things that you can consider. Now, if you just want to get a real rough guesstimate about what your house or your building could do, Google has something called Project Sunroof. This is our house right there with our old van in the yard. And as you can see, the houses that have the bright yellow have the best solar aspects. So we don't have an ideal situation, and yet it's valuable for us. It actually does good work for us, as Jim will share. So you can get a real rough vision of what might be possible in your location with Project Sunroof. Of course, your installer would use much more sophisticated tools. I was just looking at this today and noticing that it says, estimated net savings for your roof over 20 years, $11,000. Well, since it cost less than that, I can't complain, right? In any case, what about cold, snow, and hail? Generally, snow melts off and slides off very nicely. Obviously, this particular example is a more steeply pitched roof than ours, but unless you have had a really, the worst situation is when you have freezing rain followed by snow followed by freezing rain. We had that last winter. And in that case, for about a week, we didn't get any solar. But that is very rare. That hadn't happened the year before. In general, lighter snows just melt very quickly because as soon as one corner of the panel is open, then it just absorbs solar energy and melts very well. Will it damage my roof? Solar panels are not screwed directly onto your roof. As you can see in this picture, there are racks that they are attached to, as there are in ours, but we're not going to go outside to show you. We've got the pictures. In a commercial established installation on a flat roof, very frequently they aren't drilled into the roof at all, but installed on racks that are weighted down with heavy bricks, which are engineered to withstand high winds. So that's something to be aware of there too. Will it raise my taxes? There in Illinois, the answer is no. You can, yes, it will increase the value of your property, but you can apply not to be taxed on that increased value through the state of Illinois P-Tax 330 property tax form. I really don't know more than that because we haven't actually done that. We are happy to pay taxes to the state, which really needs it. So that it isn't going to reduce your taxes, but it just means that any new assessment will not increase it by the value of your solar installation. Nicola, is that correct? Do I have that right?
Yes, sorry, I heard you unmuting.
Right.
It will not, by law, it will not increase your property taxes.
Right.
Resources about that on our website.
Exactly, that's where I got this. So, will it be harder to sell my house? No. In fact, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory in 2019 calculated that solar homes sell 20% faster and for 17% more than the asking price. So that is pretty cool. Not that we are planning to sell our house anytime soon. Finally, it's too expensive. You know, only you can decide that. But it's probably more doable than you think. First of all, there are incentives available. Your energy cost will be reduced. There's a great lifetime return on investment, and if you get bids from a couple of installers, they will show you how their proposal will give you a return on investment over the life of the system. It will increase your property value and protect you from rate increases and give you that great feeling that you're doing something crucial. I resist being asked about cost because the costs and the incentives are changing all the time. So if you watched my video, you saw that I didn't really say much about that. I don't want to make any promises because what it costs for you and the benefit for you financially will depend on the system that you choose and the actual time period that you the incentives that are available at the time that you install it. So that's that's the overall. This is how residential works. You have the photovoltaic collectors on the roof, and you have an inverter or micro inverters that change the DC power into the AC power that your house needs. The electricity, then the AC power goes right into your service panel and then into your house or your electric vehicle. And then anything that is over what you are using goes right back into the grid via net metering. Net metering is crucial if you are going to, in effect, get the most benefit. You need a net meter. That means a smart meter. Almost all urban areas, at least in Illinois, have rolled out net meters, smart meters at this point. But there may be places that you don't have a smart meter yet, and in that case, you need to find that out first. And the way it works is that the sunlight produces electricity to you, which goes first to your home. Anything excess beyond what you're using goes back into the grid, and the surplus energy produced is credited to your utility account. You don't get paid in money, you get it paid in kilowatt hours, in effect. So that's where we are at this point. I'm going to stop there and ask if there are any questions, and then I'm going to let Jim share his screen and talk about bills.
Thanks, Beth.
I have a question. Are folks aware that they need to unmute themselves to talk to us?
I was just about to say that, actually. You should be able to unmute yourself. There's a little button on the bottom of the screen with a microphone. You can unmute. Alternately, you can type your questions into the chat box and I will read them out loud.
So questions, excitement. We've convinced you, right?
I do have a question. On
Yeah.
either the units, on either your church or your home, do you have backup batteries? And if so, I don't know if you can be specific in this call. You know, is there any batteries that you recommend, or just a general comment on backup batteries?
Right. Excellent question. Everyone, Joe is looking to actually go off grid. Obviously, when we're talking about net metering, we're talking about not actually going off grid. We are hopeful that eventually the company that we have possibly bought batteries. Jim is shaking his hand.
No. Let me answer that question.
Yeah, answer that question.
Okay, so Beth is referring to something we did to help support a startup that was trying to design a very exciting style of battery that could actually be plugged in without wiring it in. That's still in process. They haven't been able to pull all the strings and get all the licensing and so forth. So the kinds of batteries that you're talking about, Joe, would be like the Tesla batteries that are, you wire that into your system when you do that. And of course, especially if you're going off grid, you don't have the backup of the grid to support you. The Tesla batteries are the ones that I have heard the most about that seem to be fairly reliable, partly just because they've been around longer and they have more experience with all that stuff. And one argument in Tesla's favor is that in Australia, where there are vast areas of nothingness, having backup batteries for entire regions is really important. And Tesla boldly said, we can do that, and they have done it with a huge sort of grid battery storage system. So you're asking an excellent question, and I would just advise you to continue to watch, because right now battery technology is like the cutting edge of this whole thing, and finding ways to do that for a grid, not only for an individual house but a grid. That's a great interest, and it's happening all over the world now. Installing systems, trying them out, and doing things. So it's an exciting time to be your ear to the ground about that, to make those decisions. But you would want to be sure of a couple things. One is that you would have a good installer who knew what was going on, and had some history. I'm getting feedback. Is that?
I was for a moment.
Okay, just a note.
It seems to have gone away.
I'll keep talking. And the other, make sure that the person you work with truly understands what you want, so that you are all talking the same language when you're doing this kind of study. We've asked that question before just because we were interested, and the installers we worked with, at that point, one installer really wasn't ready to do that. In fact, the installer who installed our system, that they really, now, however, you'll notice that many installers have added that service to their possibility. And that's new since we put our first panels up. But I think you should ask good questions. I'm sure that's what's on your mind about reliability and about servicing, warranty, how long do the batteries last. They certainly do not last as long as the panels, because the panel estimate, just what's always thrown around, is 20 years. And that doesn't mean they won't work after 20 years, but it does mean that their output has lowered. They do wear. So good questions. I'm not sure I was too helpful, but.
I actually want to cut in really quick and say that some of our tours later today do have batteries.
Oh, excellent.
They're connected, they're not off grid, so they have the battery in addition to being connected to the grid. I believe one of them is starting in about 8 minutes, because we staggered these tours, but there's another one that I believe is starting at 2. Down in Champaign, and then the one that is starting in 7 minutes now is in Carroll Stream. So I would recommend maybe sitting on one of those. So it's not exactly what you're looking for. It's not off grid, but it is still a battery system.
Good information. Thanks. Thanks for the question.
And you're recording, right, Nicola?
Yes, I am recording.
So talk about bills, Jim.
Oh, okay. Well, we need to have a bill up here. So Beth is going to put a bill in front of us so that we can talk about it, as we agreed to earlier.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to share the PowerPoint, Jim, and while you are talking about the PowerPoint, I will look for our own bills.
Okay, well, the PowerPoint bill is probably gonna, if we can find another one, that's fine, but we want to show it to you, because I could tell you stuff and you go, I can't remember, just what did he say about that? And the thing that's important now, a net metering bill, let's back up. Net metering is something that is arranged through your vendor, your electrical vendor. Not all electrical vendors have that, so you have to know if, there we go. So that's important. You would have to. Net metering is something that has to do with being connected to the grid. So you need to be sure that your electric provider actually does that. what it does then is, first it has, as you saw in the slides, you have to have a smart meter that can actually think about what it's recording and get the right numbers for you. Around here in the Chicago area, Commonwealth Edison has been installing those. So that's common here. But it's only been, well, about since we got our system up. So we're getting echo again, Nicola.
I think maybe Beth should mute herself, and then I think we'll be good to go.
Okay, is that better? Yeah, good. So what you can see here, it will help explain this then. I know it's lots of numbers and small print, and you go, oh my goodness, I can't read all that. But in fact, if you look at the very beginning, there's a heading that says meter information, gives you the read dates, which are important to know because most of these billing systems now do not go from the first of the month to the last of the month. Sometimes they do, and then sometimes they, for various reasons, shift around. So if you're following, you need to be sure you're using the right dates. And then it tells you how much that you have sent out from your system to the grid and shared with other people, and how much you have here that is the helpful amount that's gone to, I'm looking for some terminology. Yeah, we have the inflow and outflow kind of division, so that you know whether you're covering your full supply or whether you needed to use some of that grid power. But then what we, and Beth said she was trying to find one of our bills, because this is a little dated. This version is just a little dated. The supply charge, the delivery charge, and the taxes and fees are the different ways that your bill is put together. And the supply charge then is the electricity that you have been using. The delivery charge has to do with sort of paying the freight for having a grid connection. It maintains the system. So let's see here.
Are you seeing that now? I put up one of our.
We just
okay.
got late. This is our actual bill. This is, as you can see, we're talking from July 30th through August 28th. So it's as current as we can get. And it has the missing number I was looking for. So as long as a lot of people don't go farther than they say, I owe this much, but it's important to read the whole thing. Because in our bill, you can see here the way the charges are made, but then the bottom line under each of these breakdowns says net metering credit. And for net metering credit, you see that's actually not only is that in the supply, but it's in the delivery and even a little bit in the taxes and fees, where you're getting a credit back for being connected to the grid and sending electricity out to be used by other people. So that you can see that there is a financial benefit through the net metering system, and you get credit for that. Not only do you get credit for that on your bill, in terms of my bill is less now, but in this case, you can see that our service bill for that summer month, when we actually used for the first time in our married lives the air conditioning, believe it or not. We've been very disciplined about that, but now we're making our own electricity. So we set our thermostat at 82, and actually this summer we needed it there because it was really helpful through many days. Our bill was $16.31. Now, you know what your electric bill was for those days, probably, at least a ballpark figure, and probably that's not that low if you don't have some kind of solar panels or something to help you. So the other piece that's really important on the bill that you're going to want to be aware of, as you see the, oops, it went away. As you see the information here where it tells you about from the grid to the grid and so on, right under that it says miscellaneous. The numbers are over there at the far right hand side, but under miscellaneous it says net metering excess generation rollover. That means that we're giving you credit for the extra power you sent for your year. And the year is not a calendar year, it's a year from when you started the system, when you've actually got net metering set up. So for us, I believe our year, it's the March-April division for us. I'm going to say a word about that in a minute. But that excess piles up. So, so you can see we have here net metering excess generation rollover 1,314 kilowatt hours. So that's what, 1.3 megawatts. That's a substantial amount of electricity we gave away, sort of. Although you saw we got some credit for it, not only from the supply charge, but some of the other things. But what I'm sure you are aware that the year is changing now. And once you get a solar system and you are eagerly maintaining a good watch on your generation, you will notice that it's been falling because it's, well, it's fall. And I just noticed that yesterday or today, the sunrise and sunset were just about even with each other. And the official start of fall is coming up on Thursday, I think. So the days will get shorter, and that makes a big difference in how much power you actually generate from solar panels. By the time we get to the dark days of December and January, you're not probably generating nearly so much. But you've got power in the bank. And because you have power in the bank, that can go against the excess that you have to pay for in the dark days. So a couple of experiential tips. We didn't plan this, but we're sure glad it happened. That we did our install with this net metered system in March, because that means that unfortunately Commonwealth Edison is not going to send you a big check for all this extra power at the end of your year. They're just going to say, well, thanks for the power, we'll take it now. They will send you a little notice, which is kind of almost a little funny, saying, gosh, you've got a lot of power in the bank, don't you want to use it? I guess if you were a potter and had a kiln that you needed to fire up that was run on electricity, it'd be a good time. But actually, the truth is, because of that timing, it means that we have the blessing of piling up extra power through the long days, and then using that extra power through the winter days, so that when they do that, well, we wipe the slate clean and start a new year, we have pretty much used up our excess, and then we can start building again. So as a practical matter, if you're using this kind of setup, it's helpful to do that in those, March would be a great time, because as the days begin to get noticeably longer, which happens in April and May, you will find, probably to your surprise on your system, that those will probably have your peak generation days, because not August, not July, when you say, but those are the bright hot days. The word that's most important there is hot. The panels are not as efficient during really high temperatures. So as you can see, Beth is showing, here is our history of usage. This is just our electrical usage during that time, but we generate more power in April and May on good days than even in the longer but hotter days. It's not a huge difference, but it's a noticeable difference. And so we were just, this is just a tip that there is a bit of an advantage to doing this in the spring before the days get longer. And I've been surprised that we look at our chart and go, oh my goodness, it was late April, early May that we had the highest generation day of the whole year. So I guess that explains how this net metering is to your advantage. If you have this set up and so on, that it can be helpful to you. So I see we have a note from Rex. He left us a little message there. So any questions? Do you have any questions about that, the bill and how that seems to work? It's something you have to apply for, and it takes a little time. It's really helpful if you have a good installer that they help do that. They know the ins and outs and who to talk to and how to fill out the forms, and that's part of the service they should provide. Another note I would just say, just so I don't forget it, because I wrote it down here, that when you're looking at a system, a couple of things that are important. One is, there is no cost from any reputable installer for giving you a bid. So feel free, call them up and just say, look, here's my address, and I'm interested in a solar system. Give me a bid from your company. You should have 2 or 3 bids from good companies and be able to compare them, so you can actually see, you know, if there's something uncomfortable to you about those bids, pay attention to that. Most of these folks are good-hearted people, and they really believe in not only doing a good business, but they believe that this is a good thing to be doing. But just make sure that you get a wider view of your needs. They should be able to tell you that. They will ask you for a bill, because that way they will know how you saw what a bill looks like. It has a lot of information about your usage. One of the things that we found is interesting is that no one ever tried to oversell us. And I think that was a true benefit of the honesty of the installers. They could have told us, we can cover every square inch of your roof in panels, and it's only going to cost you mega bucks, but it'll do the job for you. No, they said, here's your usage, and it doesn't help you to overdo. And you're going to say, but wait, I remember all those credits. I want more credits. I want to be a little electric company. And well, Commonwealth Edison, and I'm sure Ameren and others have figured that out. They don't want you to be an electric generating company, so they will put a cap on how much excess capacity you can install and be part of the net metering system. So that's just the thing to be aware of. And that's why we had always hoped to get an electric car, but when we first set up our system, we didn't. We really weren't ready, and the market wasn't ready for us. 3 years later, we got a used electric car, low mileage used electric car for $10,000 less than we would have paid for one when we did the first part of our system. So that's why we added panels then. The other thing that I think is of interest is about money. So just to say a word about that, can I afford it? And there are a bunch of ways, and Illinois has tried to sort of help promote that. It's a benefit our state that I think we call it now the block grant program. So when we installed our first part of our system, to get the financial benefit from that, we actually had to contract to sell energy credits. And it worked, we did that, but it means that the money comes over the years of use and so on. And a lot of people are saying, but couldn't we just get that money up front? And that's what the block grant program through your installer can, I think, allow you to do that, so that that can lower the cost. In effect, what they're saying is, we know if we did that every month, tell us how much you used, and we go through a bunch of selling credits and all of that, we can figure all of that out and then give you the money that you can reduce the cost of your install. So there are other systems too that you'll hear about, like leasing and so forth, and we have not had an experience with that. So, but it can be done. I know businesses and nonprofit like churches can sometimes do that to their benefit. So I will end my tirade now.
Yeah, you just have to find out what's available at the time. We're certainly not experts on that. A couple of things I want to add to what Jim said, to look for a reputable installer, emphasis on reputable. Look at the illinoissolar.org website, because members of the Illinois Solar Energy Association are reputable installers. There are different ways to finance a system. And one of the ways is, oh golly, you don't pay anything, but you also don't get any of the benefits. All of the incentives, et cetera, go to the company. And basically you're leasing them, or you are leasing electricity from them. They promise that your bill won't go up and it'll be a set amount, and that can be a benefit. But you don't own the system, and so that's a different way of installing solar. It's good for some people and some businesses and some churches. Maybe it's not for everybody, but just be sure that you understand the difference and you understand what your situation and your financial system is. And if it doesn't seem like what you want, don't do it. Don't do it with those people. I'm not saying that the lease system is not reputable. I'm saying it's not for everybody.
Right.
So be aware of that. But Illinois Solar Energy Association has great people.
Yes, it does.
So Jim, can you show some of the screens from Enphase and how much fun you have?
Yes, I will see if I can dig that up here now.
Okay, while you're doing that, let me ask, there are some comments here in the chat box?
Yeah, I think there are.
There are. They're mostly just some add-ons to what Jim was talking about. I do want to mention one thing brought up was, what installation looks like post-COVID. And it is a little bit different, but installations are still happening. And it's different depending on every company. Some are larger than others. Some have better, procedures in place than others. And they're all dealing with it in different ways, but it is still absolutely possible to get an installation during the pandemic. But if anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute or type them into that chat box.
Sure. I think I got what we want to look at, if we're ready for me to do that.
Before you do, Jim, well, let me just
Yeah.
mention something I just remembered. The very first thing you want to do is to look at your load. The very first thing you want to do is to see if there is anything in your building that needs to be upgraded in this modern world. And the first thing we did when we first bought this house was to go through it and change all of the light fixtures to LEDs. The same thing at the church. It's 100% LED light fixtures. You know, we did the very best that we could in terms of energy efficiency. And that is something you need to do first so that you have an accurate idea of what your load is going to be, which reminds me, before winter, I really need to defrost the freezer. Over to you, Jim.
Okay, we're going to try this share the screen thing. I think this is it. I'm going to try it and see what happens. So are you seeing our end phase software now? Okay, so what you're looking at here is the whole thing on the screen. I can't tell that because I'm looking at my screen now. I have a big monitor, so
Yeah, we can see it.
you can see it all. Good. So you can see today is not a great solar day because it's really kind of cloudy and gloomy here. We might say, well, you're not going to get any solar power today. It's all sort of overcast and so on. But you look at our panels and you can see all the panels are here. Some are a little more active than others because it's kind of iffy out there. And we do have some trees that make a difference. But you can tell that you can monitor your system with, and any system should let you do this in some way. And it's almost always some kind of add-on or app or special program. So this is a look at our actual panels right now. This is what's going on outside. So let's see, there are other, so this is a history panel. There are a couple different ways our Enlightened software shows this. This is actually the classic version. I like it better than the newfangled one. But you can tell just by the color of the squares, because we're looking at down the far left side are the months and years. So the top one is September 20th of 2019, and the bottom one is September 2020. And then the squares are the days. And a quick glance will show you how the intensity of the generation of the light and the generation are scattered through this. So we added the new panels on February 10th of this year. And you can see, I can cursor up here if this is helpful, that it was still not very good solar at that time. So in this display, it shows it as the color. The darker it is, the less light it is. The brighter it is, the more light. So here's a very small generation that day because it was really bad, cloudy. There's a much higher kilowatt hour output. So being able to see this, it's kind of fun. As Beth said, you sort of look up, oh, how are we doing now? But this illustrates some of what I was saying, that is sort of surprising. When I wanted to find that really, really nice day, I went up to April, the brightest day. And then this month, September, is already, the tint is tending toward the darker blue because the days are just shorter. So there's there's a day with a lot of clouds, and here's a day with good sun, and a lot of sort of in between, pretty bright, pretty sunny days, very stable generation. And then here's today, and you'll see that in this particular software, this is giving us not only the day, but this down here is displaying how that day has been going. So this little spot right here is what has come in the last, I think these are 15-minute increments, if I remember rightly. And so obviously we had some heavy clouds over here on this side. And then you can see, so
That's, Jim, those are the days.
the days. Oh,
Energy
right,
projection
right.
September.
Per day, yes, that's right. This is the day. So I didn't click over to hours. There are the hours. So this kilowatt hours produced today. And you can see compared to that day, that's an almost perfect curve for us. That day shows you the way our generation works on a really good day. And you'll notice something, it's not even. The morning is a steep curve. That means that the house across the street and the tree in front do interfere with our generation for the earlier morning hours. And then the sun gets up above that house and the tree, and so the production goes way up. And then it tails off as we go through a day in a fairly steady, even curve, remembering that that's afternoon and our panels are less efficient because our house actually faces slightly southwest, mostly, I'm sorry, southeast. But it gets light even if the sun is not shining strongly directly on the panels. So I think that's what we wanted to show. Let's see.
And also the cooler days of September the panels are more efficient.
They're more efficient. That's right.
Just like in the spring. So that's a fun thing.
So I think we got that. And there are the months. And then this software lets you look at the months. And again, as you can see, so this is the whole experience from 2017 till now. And you can see how the generation by month is different. And this illustrates what I talked about building a reserve here, which then, in terms of our usage, is really helpful on these darker months. And then this software has very interesting things like on that particular month, up to now, we could light the Eiffel Tower for 5 minutes. Not sure that's so important, but there's something here that is really useful to me. Here, I think I can click over there. So in other words, we can see how we're doing in terms of generation on things that are useful to us. Let's see, let's go to a day. Let's look at a day, and let's look at a good day here. And so this is Friday the 25th, and it was a good day, and that was enough power to run a refrigerator for 4 days. So in one day, we had enough electrical input to run the refrigerator for 4 days. So we took care of 4 days of worth of refrigeration, so to speak, with 1 day, and therefore those other days of generation can do other things for us. I mean, that's just a mental concept. We don't actually have a switch that moves the generation around to different appliances, but just as a way of getting a handle on things. So Is that clear? Anyone else?
Yeah, I think that was an excellent explanation. It looks like we've got about 5 minutes left of the hour. So I think this would be a great time to see if anybody has any questions. But in the meantime, I want to say thanks so much, Beth and Jim, for an excellent presentation. And thank you, everyone who took an hour out of their day to learn a little bit more about solar. So feel free to unmute yourself or to type that into the chat box, and we'll do our best to answer your questions.
Well, and we thank you folks for coming and listening and asking questions and such. Hope it was helpful.
We didn't talk a whole lot about how to finance your church's solar. There are a lot of different ways, but surprisingly, there are people who are passionate enough that just asking may, even in this COVID era, may actually, you may find somebody just as enthusiastic and able to support such a project, or more than one. I was once preaching at a church as a guest, and I was told, don't talk about solar. We're having a building campaign. And I got up and I said, I was told not to talk about solar, but you've got a great roof, and a building campaign is exactly when you should be putting solar on it. I haven't been invited. Not because of that, though. FUMCAH, Arlington Heights, right. Used solar RECs to offset cost, yes. They are not always, that's renewable energy credits. Those aren't always available to commercial or nonprofits, but there are some ways that can happen. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, we initially were looking at a grant, and that was under Governor Quinn. We're in the process of finishing up the paperwork. The guy went on vacation, came back in January. Quinn didn't get reelected, and those funds were swept up by Rotter. So then we sort of reconvened. And that's what we were with Rex. I think we're getting $180 a rec. So it was a good rec back then.
Yeah.
Yes, the federal incentives are reducing.
That's
which,
true.
They were 30% when we installed our expansion, and they're down to 26% this year, and next year they will be 22%. But even at 22%, that's a good chunk of change out of your initial cost of your system.
Right.
Churches can't use investment tax credit, can they? Because since they're nonprofit and they're exempt from federal tax, right?
That's right. That's right. That's why it's a different thing. It's a different thing.
Quick question on your adding February panels. When you added the new panels and the colors just made a horrendous change on the graph that Jim was showing, is that relative to the production and the total value, or is that, did they actually shift some panels and you put some panels in the perfect spot and God shined his light upon you?
A good question. Actually, the panels are sourced from, I think, the same company, and yet just in the 2.5 years, they actually had gotten more efficient. So the same size panels, and they're more efficient panels. So yeah, they actually generate more on a sunny day, even though their aspect is a little less favorable maybe, but that's really the big difference.
Right, they're not on the best part of the roof. And that's something else to consider if you think you might be starting at this point and then expanding. For some reason, it was not expected, but our initial installation had microinverters. That means every panel has its own inverter. rather than having a big one for the whole system, which made it a whole lot easier to add more panels. So if you think you may want to expand in the future, then by all means ask for micro inverters instead of a major single inverter.
All right, I think that's all we have time for. But again, thanks so much, Beth and Jim, and thanks everyone who joined us today. And hope you have a great afternoon.
Yes, thanks for coming.
Amen. Thank you all for coming.
Good to see everybody.